Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Today, our group will be presenting regarding the biodiversity. First of all, I will introduce our group member. Okay, first, my name is Nurul Nabiha binti Rosman. The second member is Adiba Ashikin binti Jamil Asri. The third member is Adiba Shasha Nordiana binti Muhammad Zul Majid. And the last member is Nurul Shohanis binti Sabaruddin. Now I will start our presentation with the introduction. We have chosen Kinabatangan Sabah as the example that can view the situation in biodiversity. As we all know that in Kinabatangan Sabah, there is located a longest river named Kinabatangan River. That area has been stated one out of two places where 10 primate species can be found on Earth. This primate species is referred to the lemur, lorises, tarsiers, monkey, and apes. Due to human action in that area has been interrupted by humans to do their activities such as agriculture and logging activities. In 1980s, the forests in Kinabatangan were redesignated from the agriculture sector like plantation of paddy, cocoa, coffee and rubber. It changed to the oil plantation. In order to preserve that area, there is an initiative launched in 2002. This initiative were launched by the Chief Minister of Sabah. It has been called as Corridor of Life. Throughout the Corridor of Life, there is a few effort that has been implemented. First, transforming the unproductive plantation to the natural forest. Throughout the transformation, it's helped in handling critical habitat issue for the wildlife. The second effort is replanting native tree activities at the degraded land. Why native tree has been chosen? Because it feature where it's occur naturally and it's helped in providing food and shelter for the wildlife. The third initiative is the rest of the forest that has not been avenged will be protected. This to ensure that the forest will maintain its originality. Lastly, the wildlife bridge were created over the drain. The reason why the bridge were built because to allow the elephant or big mammal to travel between the forests. To summarize, throughout the Corridor of Life initiative, it is very good and cause many goods and benefits to the wildlife, also to the plants in the area. Next, I will pass the baton to the next presenter.
Hello, my name is Nur Shohanis binti Sabaruddin. So I want to talk about the definition of biodiversity. Biodiversity, also called biological diversity, the variety of life found in a place on a world, or often the total variety of life on Earth. A common measure of this variety, called species richness, is the count of species in an area. Colombia and Kenya, for example, each have more than 1,000 breeding species of birds, whereas the forests of Great Britain and of eastern North America are home to fewer than 200. There are several definitions of biological diversity from different people such as: first, according to Mr. Kennel, Swiss Federal Institute for Forest, Snow and Landscape Research, Zürcher, Burmensdorf, Switzerland, 1998, biodiversity may be viewed as a concept, a mental construct, or as a term. Whereas the complexity of biodiversity as a concept is an center of current scientific discussion, terminology focus on another approach. Okay, second, according to Convention on Biological Diversity 2006, The term biological diversity is defined as the variability among living organisms from all sources, including inter alia, terrestrial, marine, and other aquatic ecosystem, and the ecological complexes of which they are part. This includes diversity within a species, between species, and of ecosystem. Okay, next, biodiversity from Cardinal 2012 could be also defined as the variety of life, including variation among genes, species, and functional traits. Okay, other than that, according to Wilson 2007, the real biodiversity is the genetic diversity. For geneticists, the biodiversity is the diversity of genes and organisms. They study processes such as mutation, gene exchange, and genome dynamic that occur at the DNA level and generate evolution. Okay, last, for biologists, biodiversity is the gamut of organisms and species and their interactions. Organisms appear and become extinct, sites are colonized, and some species develop social organization to improve their very varied strategies of reproduction.
Next is the increase of biological diversity. There are 3 points under the increase of biological diversity. The first one is moderate amount of disturbance, which is important to regional disturbance damages, and more service disturbance naturally or originally from a variety of causes. These causes are also include the fires or storm in the forest, or also a student flow of water from the storm into the pot. It is because some of these could reshape the structure and also make a function in other different way. So with this, it can increase the ecosystem complexity and can make it less competitive species to have habitats. So for the second point is high diversity at one tropic level, increase the diversity at another level. This means position the acropolis for food web, which is because the tropic level of an organism is the number of the step that can start the food chain. So many kind of organism provide habitat for many kind of animal because there are high species in variety tropic group, which is for example the tree as their function, and the trees provide a habitat for bird and insect to live in it, or to make a shelter under the leaf. So it has a strong positive effect on the ecosystem service that individual tropic group, which is it can make more strongly functions as a biotic condition to extend the previous experimental result to a real world ecosystem. So for the third point is a small variation in environmental conditions, which is the rate change in climate. This is such as well as temperature, nutrient supply, and many other that already has a significant impact on biodiversity and also ecosystem. It's not only that, but also affected the population size, distribution on species, and the time of reproduction. For you information as well as the frequency of the disease outbreak at the species. Okay, for this slide is about the decrease of biological diversity. There are also 3 points in this slide. The first one is extreme environment, which means the condition near the limits of what the living things can withstand. And the most extreme environment has a simple communities with the low level of the biodiversity. It is because it has a constraint to adapt because the resources are often scarce. So the example of this also include the volcanoes, Mount Everest, and also the geographical poles. But the one who living in this condition already can do really well to adapt the living circumstance. So it can based on the people that live in this extreme environment. So for the second point is about a recent introduction of aquatic species, which is mean the species from other areas come to the another one. This species is very harmful, especially an invasive species, because it can living organism of any kind, such as a plant, insect, or even the amphibian. So it can cause harm to the environment, although the kind is not a native to ecosystem. This species can grow and reduce quickly and also spread to the other area of place aggressively. So because it's may not have any control when a new aggressive species form or introduced into an ecosystem, because it can spread very quickly to take over the other place or areas. So the food involved in an ecosystem can be changed by replacing or destroying the native food resource. So for the third one is geographical isolation, which is mean the fish on a different island, uh, which means that every island environment is selected for the traits that can be beneficial on the particular island. So the genetic different accumulated in the social populations leads to many distinct species, and also being on a real or ecology island for about more than a years. And the site are strictly or um, are generally relieve the isolated, but by using the stepping stone to improve the journey exchange that will be uh, problematic because it can insane a land use in areas. So with this is can decrease the biodiversity and become the harmful to the ecosystem. So now I pass to the other presenter.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Adiba, and so today I will be presenting about the effort to preserve the biodiversity. So as we know that there are many efforts that have been taken into action, but today's presentation I will be presenting or explain detail in the way of the captive breeding program, habitat restoration, encouraging people practicing the sustainability, and also the last one is to by effort to preserve the biodiversity by way of reduce the emission of gas. Okay, so to the next slide. Right. So as for the first one, which is the captive breeding program. So basically the captive breeding program is the under control or collaboration with the Department of Zoo, Sanctuary, and other where those animals are being kept in enclosure and are bred to produce future generation of their species. So basically, all the animal are being kept in the zoo, as for example, which is the animal will be kept in the zoo or captive breeding program, such as the uh, animal which in risk of extinction, such as orangutan and also tiger and many more. So the breeding program purpose is to release the species back into their habitat or their nature when the number of species are showing growing off breed or back to the normal. And then another way to conserve the biodiversity and also environment as well is by encouraging people in practicing the sustainability. So by using the sustainable products, it can reduce the environmental issues such as the plastic pollution and many more other environmental impacts. So basically, the sustainable is not highlight in the content of product only, but it is also included the principle or pillar of sustainable itself. As for instance, sustainability is covering the three main basics such as economy, environmental, and social. Thus, in finding the best solution, to conserve the environment as well, such as the biodiversity, it is so related with the pillar of sustainability in terms of environment context. So sustainable product can be referred to where the product is recyclable. In simple word, it means that the product used and not simply going to be waste or to be sent to the landfill. But we are going to using it. We are going to recycle it back. As for example, the effort that we have been practicing, such as from using the single-use plastic bag, changing to biodegradable plastic bag. Okay, so this program is to ensure that we can reduce the pollution, we can reduce all the environmental impact so that we can achieve our goal, which is to conserve the environment and also the biodiversity as well. So I will give you example. As for example, like if we want to practicing the recyclable such as the aluminium, and then as we know that to extract the aluminium, which is the raw material, involve many activity which give impact to the wildlife habitat, such as to extract the aluminium involve the mining activity which can ruin the I'm sorry ruin the habitat of the animal itself. So by we emphasize the sustainability practice, we can ensure that the animal can live in their habitat peacefully without any interruption from human and so on. Okay, so we move on to the next way, the next effort, which is to preserve the biodiversity as well, which is to reduce the emission of gas. As we know that the gas is emitted is also known as the greenhouse gas. So there are many contributors of green gas such as from the agriculture sector, livestock manufacturing and others. So you can refer to the pie chart that I have been attached here. Okay, so this is the effort which is to reduce the emission of gas is taken by United Nations, which is they have made the Sustainable Development Goals, and also the government of Malaysia, which is put the effort to reduce the emission by encouraging people to using public transport. Alright, this is because this greenhouse gas give a lot of negative impact to our environment. So it is under uncontrolled. So there are many efforts to protect the environment to reduce the gas emission. Alright. Alright. As for the last effort to preserve the biodiversity is habitat restoration. So habitat restoration is important to the wildlife and plants to live in their own nature. In fact, the zoo or sanctuary is not their natural natural habitat to live. However, the zoo are essential to protect the wildlife from human activity. As for example, the captive breeding program, which I have mentioned before, are being discussed above is to I'm sorry, the captive breeding program, which is I have mentioned before, is one of the program to breed the endangered species, that these species will be released to their normal habitat when the species is back to the normal or low risk of extinction. Alright. So the habitat restoration is the process of bringing an area back to its natural state before it was impacted through the destructive human activity or irresponsible human activity such as illegal logging and massive forest fire, which is both of these human activity give lead to bad impact for the biodiversity. The forest fire in a big scale, as for example, like we see in Australia, but in Australia is a natural forest fire. What I want to say here is the human activity, which make a big forest fire to make a livestock farm and so on. This is will give a bad impact to the environment or biodiversity. Alright. This is because all this wildlife all this wildlife has lost their own natural habitat because their home is being destroyed or ruined by human. Other than that, haze pollution also will be occurred due to massive forest fire which lead to the environmental issue. In my point of view, it is important to conserve the environment and biodiversity because we need each other. As for example, plant, human, and animal together and need each other. As for plant, needs human to ensure that they can get the carbon dioxide from human to make the process photosynthesis process and so on. So, and other one is if plant is being destroyed, as for example, this is another example. If plants are being destroyed, planet will lose the sources of oxygen. So, this is essential to restore the habitat to sustain the good environment. Alright, we can see in Malaysia how the government of Malaysia want to conserve the biodiversity in Malaysia. Like the government has established the tapak Ramsar to avoid this hotspot biodiversity will be destroyed by human activity and many more. So these species are known as endemic species, which is only live in that area, will be protected from the human activities such as the illegal logging, forestation, and many more. So this program, which is habitat restoration, is considered as a considered as a good effort rather than to put the animal to the zoo and other sanctuary, because as we know that like I mentioned before, the zoo and sanctuary is not their natural habitat to live. Like human, we live in our community, and so goes to them. They want to live in their community and so on. So yeah, thank you.
As the conclusion for this presentation, we could say that biodiversity can be affected by many factors. These factors can come from various reasons, but mostly it comes from the human. So it is important for us to concern about our role in preserving biodiversity, because as human we can think on how to preserve our biodiversity. But government also responsible in this issue, because why I would say like that, because the government is an entity that have control over human. They can control human action throughout his rules and regulation. So we can see from this whole view that most of us is responsible in ensuring the preservation of natural surrounding. So that's all from us. Thank you.